So, hello to all of you who've decided to click play on this video. Welcome to another episode of Experiencias que forman, which means experiences that shape us. Experiencias que forman is an online educational strategy created as a result of a partnership between the Colombian Film Commission, something part of Proimágenes, and SENA, the initials in Spanish that mean National Learning Service, and the ENAC, which in Spanish stands for the National Film School of Colombia, to share the expertise behind productions that have received something called Cine, which means audiovisual investment certificates, and support from the Colombian Film Fund. All these arise from the law 1556 from 2012. This law seeks to encourage or stimulate or motivate the cinematographic and audiovisual industry through incentives that help promote Colombia as a film production destination. So, I'm Carla Lowe. I'm a teacher at the ENAC. I'm immersed in the world of script writing and I'm a film director. So, before we continue, I would like to send a big hi to all the people who made this moment possible, to the SENA team, to the Film Commission, and of course to the ENAC. Remember, you are welcome to comment and ask anything you want. Okay, so having said that, today we have the honor of speaking to a fantastic executive producer with many, many years of experience in feature films, docuseries, reality series. From his trajectory, I would like to highlight Naked and Afraid, presented by Discovery, Mating Season, also by Discovery, and Dear, an Apple TV presented by them. So basically, hello Todd, welcome to Experiencias que forman.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I'm really happy to finally meet you, to have this moment and this chat with you. So before we start getting into the big questions, tell me a bit about yourself. What project brings you to this conversation? Like, why are we here?
Well, we were doing a new project, a new series for Discovery Plus entitled, the working title was Mating Season. It's now changed its title to Love in the Jungle, which premieres out on May 8th on Discovery Plus. And we were looking for locations and destinations to meet the creative of the show. And having previously shot in Colombia, working with Screen Colombia and the crew down in Colombia, we were excited to explore the options to be down there again. It was such a wonderful experience the first time that the environment of the nature, which the show Love in the Jungle required, just met all our needs. And then to have the benefit of the tax incentive through Cine just made it an easy choice for us to push for that location and to have Discovery Plus agree and have the experience and production down there throughout.
That's great. And how did you find it? Where did you record? Can you remind us where the whole set was?
We shot just a couple hours south of Medellin at this nature reserve called Rio Claro.
Oh, Rio Claro, Antioquia. Wonderful.
Yes, it was lovely.
And how was the scouting process? Was it like off the top of your head, or was there a severe scouting process looking for the exact set you needed, or how was that?
So we engaged a local Colombian company called Screen Colombia, who I'd worked with before, as well as my producing partners here in Los Angeles. And when we told them about the project and what we needed, they did the scout for us in Colombia. So they, gave us a couple options between Rio Claro, up in Cartagena, and some other locations that were around Colombia. As we were narrowing in on the creative, they were kind of doing more diligence for us to kind of narrow in that Rio Claro would be the best option. So once we determined that that was most beneficial, then we came down for our initial scout. And as per usual, Screen Colombia kind of did above and beyond and presented just a wonderful location, as well as the country of Colombia in general.
Wow, that's great. So now we know where it was and how you got there. What is the reality series about? If you could give us like a brief synopsis or a few words.
Sure. So this is a new dating competition show on Discovery Plus, and it takes a new look at how people can find their mate. Rather than just going up to a person in a bar and saying, "Hey, how are you?" This is taking it from a natural point of view and using what animals do with mating rituals and mating calls. So these individuals that are in the show need to kind of attract one another by using and emulating animal rituals. So the
Wow.
first couple episodes, it's pretty quiet as they're trying to learn about one another with nonverbal communication. And as they, pick and have their experiences with the individuals that they meet, then they can kind of move into talking and having to get to know one another from there.
Wow, that's crazy. And what was your role in this project?
I was the co-executive producer, so I help oversee kind of the logistics, the budgets, and the general kind of production aspects of it. So I work hand in hand with the showrunner, who oversees much of the creative and story, and I complement that with all the logistics to the production.
Great. So like all.
A bunch of other people. It's not just me. It's a whole team of people that does it.
Okay. So you're basically having to delegate on who does what with all the whole logistics part of it.
Lots of delegation for sure. Yes.
Okay. So do you have any anecdotes on set?
I'm not sure how many I can share on here, but
PG.
I'm trying to think of what specifically kind of antidotes are you looking for? Kind of the production stuff, or just behind the scenes stuff, or just general little stories about the experience?
Exactly. Anything you'd like to share?
Well, I think one thing, and I'm hoping most of the people can kind of attest to this, it was hard to get to work every day because our location at Rio Claro was so pretty that it was easy. We had a long walk every day to our tech room. So during that tech room walk, you're walking along this river in the jungle, and it's easy just to kind of meander off and be late for work, or at least it was for me every day.
Yeah, and be mesmerized by the birds and the trees.
Yeah, for sure. And just being surrounded by all the nature sounds every day. We had some horrifying thunder and lightning storms a couple times for the people from the U.S. I think it was probably pretty easy for the locals, but
whoa, like an actual tropical storm?
Yep. Yeah. For sure. For sure. It was pretty intense. It was pretty intense for us. Yeah.
Okay. So that means that you've been on board since the very, very beginning to the very, very end. Or at what point did you get on board?
So, yeah, once the show was greenlit from Discovery with the production company Matador Content, they engaged myself and the showrunner, and then we went off running to see from the pre-production through the delivery of post.
Okay, so you know everything about it. You've been since its birth.
Lots of people know everything, and I just kind of help move things along.
Okay, sure. How I know you're saying that you were more of the logistic parts of the presupuesto and all that, but how creative was your input to the project? Apart from the logistics of the budgets, etc.
So I would work with kind of our creative, the executive producers and the co-producer who oversee the story with the contestants and stuff like that. And I would try to do the best I could to support their creative needs within, the scope of the budget that we had. So we would try and find creative ways to give them everything that they needed with which we could. And sometimes I had to say no, and sometimes we would find alternate ways to execute what they were looking to do creatively.
Exactly. That's exactly my point, because obviously from film school to what you see and like the stereotype of what an executive producer does, everybody thinks, oh no, it's just full paperwork and that's just, being behind a desk. So like I would like to just talk about and speak about how being also an executive producer also has to do with many creative skills. So give me one example, like how you managed to get a solution, arrive to a solution with a creative idea or something like that.
Well, one of the things that we encountered early on was, we're shooting a dating show and we're shooting these people living together in nature. So, from the outset, we were trying to figure out how can we afford to shoot 24/7 with everybody to get the best story options as we go into post, but with restrictions of how, crews work and the limited amount of hours that a crew can work and the limited budget, how we can afford that. So we had to come up with a way to get the access through remote cameras and reducing our camera teams to still a long day, but split between two crews, between 16 and 18 hours. So we had to sit down creatively and say, hey, this is how many cameras we can afford to do, and this is what we can do with camera operators. This is how we can get the story elements throughout the night and stuff like that. So that was kind of one of the big components that we had early on. When once we saw the location, what the logistics were, and how we could actually shoot it too. So it all kind of comes into play.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, so now these are the questions I was building up to. Why do you think it's important to record in Colombia? And why Rio Claro? Why? I know you said you got mesmerized by the beauty of the nature, and obviously because of the topic of the animals and the crude and the vital energies that you wanted to show. But why? Why do you think it's important to record in Colombia and Rio Claro?
Well, the story itself, we're using animals to be the mating rituals for our kind of a muse to tell the story of how humans can hopefully duplicate that to find the same success that animals do. So the backdrop has to be nature. In finding something that can represent that with Rio Claro itself, which is a nature reserve kind of built into the side of nature, where we have a flowing river, we have the jungle above us, we have the mountains above us, and it's just the beauty all around for what it could be and represents. And I think it's closer to the organic nature than it is in other places. So it really just allowed for all the creative that we needed to do.
Okay, sure. And you guys received the audiovisual immersion certificate, this stimulus. How do you think this impacts Colombian film industry? And how do you think it impacts it?
Having the tax incentive?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I think it opens up a whole lot of doors for it. Colombia itself, whether you're in Bogota, Medellin, or other places around the country, it offers so much. And I think, having shot pretty much around the world, dealing with the Colombian crew and our fixers down there, the overall experience has just been wonderful. They have a good amount of gear that you can get locally. They have a wonderful crew that just works tirelessly to get everything done. They are very amenable to, visiting people from the US who have some different cultural characteristics that we're used to and standards here that they adopted pretty quickly. And I think the more that people understand that, the more people are going to be going to Colombia. And then you throw in that you can get, a tax benefit for the money. It just is the icing on the cake.
I bet. So based on what you said, there was a percentage of the crew that were Colombian, local.
We had a large percentage, yeah. We had a part of our incentive going down there was having my previous experience of working with the Colombian crew that was very favorable. So knowing that, for the size and scope of the show that we were shooting, we really needed a lot of manpower to help with the operations, both crew and just general set operations. So we went down there with probably, a handful, our HODs were from the US, aside from our art director, who was 100% local. The entire art department was actually local, and they were wonderful. But we had camera operators, ACs, media managers, wardrobe, producers. The whole gamut came from Colombia and just complemented the US crew as one.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but just to get a bit deeper in there, do you think these type of productions, based on your experience, help put Colombia on the map as a possible set location?
I know for me it does. I have other productions that are kind of in different phases, and we've been speaking about how potentially we could do it in Colombia. Does it make sense for Colombia? And having a potential tax incentive down there just enhances and takes it into more consideration for moving down there, whether you're shooting in the jungle, whether you're shooting in the city of Bogota or Medellin or whatever. And just having the crew that you can rely on, it just really helps.
Of course, yeah. And once you build the trust and once you've delegated and you know that you're working as one.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's fantastic. And now something a bit more personal. What have you learned from Colombian culture? Like, how has the actual culture, the actual people, the actual, behind the scenes, how has that influenced in your life, in your personal being?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is just the culture down there, where they have, family, friends, I think are more important than work. Whereas in the
Hmm.
US, work becomes just such a staple and such a focus that in Colombia, they work hard and they take that to heart. And then they say, well, I'm working, but I'm working to spend time with my family, friends, and they make that a major point in their lives. And for me, was one of the best things is how open the Colombian crew and staff were to kind of work together and just open their arms to visitors coming into their country and share their culture with us, which was just great. And it doesn't
Like
always
the
happen.
warmth, the
Just
warmth of.
yeah, yep,
Hmm.
yep.
Okay, and how has it, I mean, talking about now the part of the percentage of the Colombian crew, is it different, the communication and the way the team works? Like, is there a culture clash, or how is it for you to work with Colombian people?
I don't think there's much of a culture class. I don't recall ever having any instances like that. The only kind of thing is, for me, who I don't speak Spanish,
Hmm.
unfortunately, um, and not everybody would speak English, although most people would have at least a general understanding of kind of broken English to get points across.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, we had to rely on kind of department heads or interpreters just to communicate stuff. But at no point did I really find it delayed or
Being a
caused.
setback, or
Yeah, nope,
okay,
nope,
okay,
nope.
okay.
I
Oh,
mean, every once in a while, there was a couple little things where we would, misinterpret one another. But I learned listo works for everything. So that was my word for everything. Was listo.
that's great. And apart from Colombia, have you worked in different countries? Well, obviously, apart from US.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of countries around the world for sure.
And do you think that people from different crews and being on set in different countries, do you think that influences in the creative process or in the actual end product?
Absolutely.
How?
I mean, having worked in different countries, there's different cultures and customs in each of those countries, and some countries are more open to kind of acquiescing to some of the cultures and customs when you have a visiting country like the US come in. There's expectations for how, we shoot, and sometimes we're a little bit brash and kind of expect more from countries, which isn't fair, but sometimes we do. And I think the experience in Colombia was very good, that we found a good balance between what our expectations were and what the Colombians' expectations were to find a working solution all the way through. And it's not always the case in some countries. Some countries you just have to meld into what they want. And then that becomes more challenging because sometimes the hours are different or how they go about things different. So it costs more, or just different challenges that you have to kind of uh, go through to resolve.
Exactly, overcome. And which other crew member is the person that you most communicate with? Well, apart from your direct team, like what other, like with the director or the camera department, or what other departments are you close to, being an
I mean,
executive producer?
first and foremost was our local producer at Screen Columbia with Luna. She would kind of be the captain of everything for me.
Hmm.
She would be my first line of defense for everything. The second was probably art department, Nico, who
Oh.
was just fantastic. Um, he was always on the ready, and he and his team were just willing and able to pull off miracles. I don't know how they did it. But they would probably be the first one and two that I would speak to on a daily basis. And then our gaffer, who would oversee kind of grip and electric, Javier, I would speak to him on a daily basis too, making sure that the lighting is ready, the changes are coming in. Um, those would probably be the top three, and they would trickle down kind of to their teams. And then our locations, or like transpo, we would speak to a lot. But a lot of it came through Luna and her team, and they would kind of do the day to day, moment to moment operations.
Okay, what kind of things? Give me an example and give us an example for us who are watching.
I mean, well, a lot of it, we had a very expansive location at the Rio Claro. So, we had hotels that were, we had probably a mile or so entrance to get into the location. There was a lot of walking. We had movement of gear. So based on whatever the creative was for the day, there'd be a whole lot of set operations from transpo to art department to lighting to camera. How do we get from point A to point B? Sometimes that would be just putting things on our shoulders and walking. Sometimes it included walking to a boat, putting it onto a boat, going upriver with the boat, unloading on,
Wow.
or
Wow.
coming down off of a boat, putting on a
Mhm.
shoulder, put it into a vehicle, drive it, set it up. So Luna and her team and Transpo and locations, they would do a lot of the configuration to figure out how that's going to work, within the time frame that we needed to do.
Wow, that sounds
Feeding 200 people and housing 200 people, and there's a lot happening.
sounds fierce and extreme. And obviously the art department for being in the middle of the jungle and everybody looking so perfect and so no on point. Okay, so why do you think realities have not burnt out, to say it that way? Like, why do you think realities are still alive and still going at it?
Well, I think that's the whole thing, is their reality, right? So it's the unpredictable, predictable. Like, you're predicting the unpredictable. You have no idea what's going to happen. You don't know how people are going to act in circumstances. No one's being told what to do and what not to do. You're just allowing people to be in this situation with these parameters, and whatever happens, happens. And I think that's what's so interesting. And you get to see people's real personalities.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if we should get into this topic, but I'm really interested in it. How is the creative part? I mean, like what you say, like you're open to reality, like you set up certain things that could be, that could explode or could happen or they could mate or they could not. How do you write that in a script? Like, how was the whole creative process of it? Do you just like imagine possible outcomes, or how does that happen? Like, how did you know that this was going to be so fascinating as it is?
Well, we didn't know what was going to happen, and this was part of the whole experiment, as they were calling it, going into it, because we don't know how TV was going to be without people speaking for half of an episode or two, and how other people are going to respond to not being able to communicate aside from gestures and rituals through animals. So there's no specific script or anything that's written. There's kind of an idea of, here are the
Wow.
people that we want to follow. There's a format that they need to do through some tests, some challenges, some eliminations that kind of happen that are self-eliminated. But aside from that, we, as the production and the story, they just follow what's happening and kind of just put on guardrails for the participants to kind of do what they want to do. So they can't leave. Well, they can leave if they really want to, but they're at this location, they're there to find love. So here are the parameters that we're presenting for them to find love, and now you guys do it and see what happens. And then in post, they will then kind of craft
Magic.
stories based on how their interactions went with everybody.
Okay. That must be crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, now another kind of personal question. We're going to go in and out of personal and external questions. What other role, apart from executive producer and the whole production side, what other role have you been interested in maybe as a student, maybe in your early career? What other role have you been in or
Uh,
would like to be in?
I mean, I started more in scripted. So I was a writer's assistant for a bit.
Wow.
I've done pretty much every position on set at some point or another, which I find really helpful for me, and I think for most people, if it gives people an idea of what each department needs to do and kind of the operations of working on a set. So I worked as an art director for a long time in commercials. I've directed features. I produced features. Art installations I've been part of, documentaries, music videos, the whole gamut,
Wow.
from producing through different departments, camera, art, Even the only thing I haven't done, to be fair, is I've never done makeup, but I have done wardrobe and grip and lighting and craft service. I think as every producer has to do lots of craft service and catering just to make things happen.
Wow. And is that like you, particularly you, or do you think that to be a successful filmmaker, we should all try a bit of every single.
I mean, I think it helps for everybody to try every position. You kind of have this idea of what it's like to work in the film industry from watching movies on TV or in the theater, and you're like, oh, I want to be, a director, a producer, or an actor, and that's all you really know. And some people will come out here for one of those positions and then find that, oh, wow, it's really great to be in camera, or wow, I really find this kind of creative, indulgent in art department, and it's just great to kind of build a story around a character based on their environment. Or same thing with lighting, you find out that, wow, I really enjoy this gaffing, and I get to set the lighting and the mood and how to help tell a story through lighting or makeup, same thing. And there's so many other aspects that go into kind of contributing to filmmaking. I think it often gets overlooked of how much of a collaboration it really is, from your production assistant all the way up to the director and producers. Everybody's contributing, and without everything moving in a pretty systematic way, it's easy just to have things go off the rails pretty quickly.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's like a whole team that makes one. For example, I've recently discovered that sound is fascinating. The whole sound design. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Every sound man would agree that they don't get enough respect, but they get plenty of respect when we're in post and there's no problems.
Exactly. Yeah, underestimated and not valued on set, but
Yes. Yep.
they make the magic. So, what made you become a producer? So, you've tried all these different areas. Why did you decide, I want to do this? This is my, my destiny. How did you get there?
I mean, as a kid, I would just spend, enormous amounts of time watching television and movies. And I was a pretty active kid, but I was never really engaged in watching sports, which obviously in the US is a huge kind of pastime. I'd rather go play sports or be interactive. And I think that was part of what drew me to it, is being part of the process and being like what I call a kind of a blue collar producer, where you're in it.
Getting dirty,
Yeah, boots on the ground. It's a participatory like kind of experience, and you're just having that, and having this idea come to reality through this collaboration. It's just kind of a magical experience.
Okay. And when you first step, I mean, I know you have the whole creative process back home or wherever you do it. When you first step on foreign land, or Colombia in this case, what is your first like approximation? Like, what's the first thing you guys do? Speak to people, or go there and sleep there, or like, do you have many rituals when you go to a new country, or like what's your first approximation?
I mean, once we decide on a location, we'll do the due diligence, speaking with whatever the fixture is, and go to scout. The first thing I think is to find out what's the native food and where we're going to go eat.
That's great. And okay, so what did you discover? What dishes did you discover?
Well, that's a tougher question for me, because I'm kind of a specific, and I'm what's the word? I do not like to take lots of risk, and I don't eat seafood. But for me in Colombia, the plantains were, I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough of the plantains.
Yeah. And how do you manage to balance things out? Because obviously being a filmmaker is very hectic with times and timetables, and your whole clock changes. How do you find time to be with your family, or to be with your friends, or to do your own personal activities? How do you balance that out? How has that been a challenge, or how have you done it in your life?
Good question. I think the beauty of kind of doing the films and television is you're somewhat of a freelance person. So you kind of have a schedule, you can set the schedule, and that allows you to kind of look down into the months ahead or weeks ahead, and know that, well, we're in production for the next 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 weeks, that it's going to be crazy leading up to that. And then you can kind of carve out time post-production before you're kind of deep in the edit to take a break. Then you go into the edit for a while to do a deep dive. And then at the end of that, you come up. So for me, I kind of build little breaks in, and then in between each project, we'll take a little break to find time to relax, unwind, and kind of get grounded again before we get back into the chaos. But it's an odd industry where it's extremely intense for periods of time.
Exactly.
And there'll be moments where you're in it and you're like, oof, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And soon as you get away from it for a week or two, you're like, well, I got to get back in there.
I need to get back. Yeah.
It
get
is
the rush again.
it is this weird feeling that it's an addiction to get back into it.
Yeah. Film junkies.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And okay, now talking about stress, my small experience in production, which is very crazy because I'm disorganized, etc. I know it's very stressful, and you have to manage stress, and you're in front of people. So you seem like a chill person. How do you do to manage your inner, psychology and be able to be chill? Like, oh my God, the van just broke down and the actor's sick and someone has COVID, and how do you deal with the stress and all this responsibility that you have?
I mean, for the most part, we're making television or films, and we're living in a land of make-believe, and to be in that world, it's just, it's a dream. It's a luxury to be in there. And we're not saving lives, so everything will get sorted in due course. And
something will happen.
Something's going to go wrong. Something's going to happen. And having done this, for 20 years now, there's always a resolution to whatever comes across. No matter how big it is, we'll always find a solution to what it is. And you just take a beat, take a moment, and kind of figure it out. That being said, I also have my moments where I go back to my hotel room or back home, and I put my head on the pillow and just scream at that point so no one sees it, to make sure everybody knows that, I'm a duck on water, where everything is calm, cool, collective, above water and down.
Poker face.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. What would you like to, from your experience, from all the projects that you've worked in, from all the roles, from all the areas that you've been in, what would your advice be for film students, from students that want to get into this crazy world of filmmaking?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, it's a huge endeavor to do. Don't lose hope on it. Whenever you have the possibility to be part of a production, regardless of what the position is, get in there, learn as much as you can, and be as educated as you can about the entire process, from story to operations. One thing that often gets overlooked is contracts and how the legalese of everything in the film world works, because so much revolves around the rights of IPs and stuff like that. And there's a lot of time spent talking to BA to make sure that everybody has the proper rights to make whatever project things are. And just, it's long days, and it's a big commitment for stuff, and it's hard work. And I think people see things on a movie and it's pretty glamorous. And when you're out in 20-degree weather for 12 hours, drinking cold coffee at 2 a.m., wishing you could be in bed sleeping, it takes certain people to persevere through that. And I've seen a lot of people come and go, and the people that last, it's just a real love for what it is.
Like perseverance, just to know where your objective is.
You really just have to commit to what you're doing, to the whole process.
And what would you say to a student which has been, or maybe a young person, new to this world, thinking that they are sharks when they're little fishes? What would you say to them if they've been, pushed down and they've been doors shut in their face, and I have a script, please someone read my script, or I'm a producer, I can do it, I can do anything you want? What would your advice be for those type of people who know their objective and can't because life keeps slapping them in the face?
Well, you just have to be patient. A lot of people are going to say no, or, not take you seriously. Everybody has a lot going on, and a lot of times it's not that people don't want to give people more time. They just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you have more experience and success, more people kind of come at you for requests, and it's hard to take everybody on, to give everybody that their due kind of time. But all it takes is the perseverance, being polite, being respectful for things, being prepared for what it is. Don't think that you have all the answers. Know that you need to learn from people and be open to that, and coming into people saying, this is the project that I have. How can I help? Or how can you help me? Or how can we partner for such a project? If you can't do it, is there somewhere you can point me into? And just also knowing that when people are just rude and say no, that's okay too. Like,
Exactly.
just move on, because some people will just be pretty harsh.
Yeah.
And just
Exactly.
not to get discouraged by it. If you have a good idea, if you have talent, and if you have perseverance and you are respectful, then I think it's pretty easy, not easy, but I think time will come for those people to have their success. It may not come in the way that they want. A lot of people come out that say, I have this idea, I wrote the script, I want to produce it, I want to direct it.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not happen the first time around. And that's okay. If you wrote a script and you can't direct it, but you get to be part of that process and be part of that creative, that can be a launch pad for you to direct the next one. But now you have a relationship with a producer, or maybe a director, maybe a DP that's seasoned, that can really help elevate you as a person for what you want to do, and then move into your next project. So be open to whatever opportunities can come. And, it's a long career if you're going to be in this for your life. So you don't have to have success at 21, 22, 23 when you first come out of film school. Like, get the experience, get the knowledge, understand what you're doing. And it's okay if you're 30 when you direct your first movie. Life experience will give you more stories to tell. Doesn't mean you can't do it at 21 or 19 or 16. Like, start doing it whenever you can. Everybody has a unique point of view, but just know that your own road takes you whatever course it does, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that's really wise as well. And I think people, well, I benefit of that comment, and I think many people do, because when the life is so fast paced, it's bombarded of you have to do, and what's where's your reputation. So that's cool. If you're 30, if you're 35, or you're 40, and you have your first film, then well, that's life can give you different paths. So just be open to
Just
whatever
to
throws
get anything kind of made and produced, it's quite the accomplishment. So if you start at 23 and you get it made at 43, that's fine too. I mean, I have a project I have a partner, and we've been working on it for 16 years.
Whoa, holy.
And it's ongoing, and it kind of ebbs and flows with things. And movies like Forrest Gump back in the day took 15 years to make. Like,
Wow, that's crazy.
you never know what it's going to be, and sometimes timing doesn't fit into it.
Yeah. Okay, so now we know you going back to our series. Now we know you recorded in Rio Claro. Where was the last location? You say that you came back to Colombia, well, having previously recorded, having a previous experience. Where was the last location?
Last time I shot for Discovery was Naked and Afraid, which we shot. I forget the name of the reserve. Oh boy, I think it was Botswana, which is off of Puerto Carreño. We were there for a couple months shooting for Naked and Afraid XL.
And how do they do the experiences? What are the what are similar, or what are the differences between both experiences?
They were, similar as far as kind of coming down into a new country and being welcomed in by kind of the Colombian team and crew. But creatively, they were entirely different. One was a dating show. The other one was Naked and Afraid, watching people survive in the wild for 40 days. It's pretty intense, having people out on a reserve with little communication, and for them to survive and eat and find shelter every day. For me, and I think for most people that oversee it, it's pretty intense to make sure that people are still safe in the decisions that they're making and being out in the wild.
Yeah.
This to those people, because we stayed off of the reserve, and we would have to take a bus ride and then walk, and then get on a 25-minute boat ride, and then a 10-minute walk, and then get on our SUVs and drive another 20 minutes, 30 minutes every day to get to each of the camps to see these people. And we weren't there overnight. There was a small team that stayed behind just for safety for each of the contestants there. But, when you're that far away with poor communication, it was pretty intense just to make sure that things are going all right every night.
That's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's speak about the future of audiovisual. What do you think about television? With the whole boom of Amazon, HBO, Netflix. Like, do you think that television will always survive and always exist, or what is your point of view with that?
Well, between like streaming and
Yes.
regular television?
Exactly.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting time. I think, with the proliferation of the streaming services, they're giving us such a vast amount of content and just giving, filmmakers this wonderful creative outlet to give to everybody around the world. And what you make something in the US that you think is for the US audience doesn't play here, but all of a sudden it plays wonderful in another country. Prior to that, you may not have had that. I think there's still a place for regular television too. At least, my experience is the US, so I know kind of the US market better than Colombian or other countries. But there's still a great market for the US, and that business plan still works for them. And that kind of becomes more of the middle road for everybody, whereas your streaming services can go down, different avenues and have a little bit more niche of an audience for this type of show or movie, or the big blockbusters as well. So I think it's great, and it gives everybody so many options to watch, almost too many options, at least for me, where you just have a long list of like, I got to get to that, I got to see that, I got to see that, and there's just a lot to choose from, which is great, and it's great for all the filmmakers and the crews, and it just gives more employment for all of them, for the whole industry.
Okay. So we have a few questions here. If there is a producer undecided about coming to Colombia, besides its locations, incentives, and crew, what would you tell him or her to convince him or her to come to record to Colombia?
The plantains.
Okay, good point.
If you're excluding all those, the locations is a big thing, the incentives is a big thing, the crews are a big thing. Just to get somebody to come, I think it's a great place to shoot, just to visit in general. Just the culture is great, and I don't really know what to convince them if those aren't part of it, but it's better than shooting in your own backyard, because it opens up new ideas for new filmmakers to come and to see things differently, in a different point of view, which may help their creative story.
And as you said previously, like, the more you live and the more you look at things and are aware of things, the more you get to have ideas. And
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, another question someone asks: do you have plans to shoot again in Colombia?
I will, for sure. At the moment, I do not. Well, that's not true. There is a project that we're considering coming back to Colombia to shoot in. We're just still waiting to kind of find out if it gets greenlit or not. And then there's another project that Colombia is on the table for consideration to shoot in, for sure.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, I'm glad you're going to come back.
Oh, I'll definitely be back, even if it's just to visit.
Even if it's just to eat plantains.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, Todd, I would like to thank you very, very much for your time, for your presence. Time flies. I didn't even realize it's almost over. So thank you very much for being here present and chatting with us. Thank you so much.
And thank you to the country of Colombia and Cine and Screen Colombia and everybody that was part of the show. It was really just a wonderful experience.
Okay. And remember, I want to tell everybody else to remind them that the trailer is up. If you could remind us the title of the reality series.
It's called Love in the Jungle, and it's on YouTube.
Love in the Jungle on YouTube. Okay, so everybody check it out. Okay, thank you. So I want to remind you all that Experiencias que forman is an online educational strategy created as a result of a partnership between the Colombian Film Commission, part of something called Proimágenes, and the SENA, which its initials in Spanish mean National Learning Service, and the ENAC, which, as I mentioned before, means the National Film School of Colombia, to share the expertise behind productions that have received something called Cine, which is what we've been speaking about today, and the support from the Colombian Film Fund. All these arise from the Law 1556 from 2012. So basically, please continue to watch these videos where we learn from experts and from the experiences of those who are producing and creating audiovisual content here in Colombia. Thank you very much.